All right, welcome everybody to the Lakers Legacy Podcast. Where are you ready for some football? Because some good old TDs may be exactly what discontented Lakers fans need to help get them through this last stagnant slog of the offseason. But hold fast to your red dick. We're almost there. I'm your host, Jonathan Hernandez, and I'm joined by my co host, Tommy Alexander. Tommy, what is good in the hood this September? Or rather, what is Jordan Goodwin in the Jalen Hood Shafino for you this September?
Hey, just trying to get through this heat wave. And then I guess like at the end of the month, it's training camp, right? I guess we got football starting. There's a lot of good sports incoming pretty soon.
Yeah, we are 29 days away from Lakers basketball, which is kind of insane given how nothing happened this offseason. So it's actually creeped up a little faster than we had thought and anticipated. So, yeah, football is here. Happy opening NFL night to everybody. And yeah, California is currently probably having the hottest heat wave of the year. It's like 106 outside right now. I can barely even walk my dog. Anyways, for today's episode, we're going to keep it short and sweet and talk about positional battles across the roster and see which ones we're keeping a close eye out on and which ones could actually end up being true battles. So let us get right into it. Obviously, we know that the Vanderbilt versus Rui Hachimura battle we think that's the most obvious positional battleground to debate and discuss. But before we get to them, Tommy, why don't we start with the combo guard battle at the 1 and 2 spots of the roster? Obviously, I think D'Angelo Russell and Austin Reeves are cemented as our starting backcourt. But what happens from there? We've got Gabe Vincent as the backup one, obviously. So then I think we're really looking at the battle between Dalton Knecht and Max Christie. So there are 96 minutes between the point guard and shooting guard positions. As I mentioned, we know D'Lo and AR are going to start. Even if they don't start, both of them are going to get their allotted 30 minutes a game at least at both the point guard and shooting guard spots. And we know Gabe Vincent, who's going to be the backup point guard, will likely get around 18 to 20 minutes. So if you take 80 minutes away from that 96 minutes between the point guard and shooting guard spots, that leaves 16 minutes left. So my question to you is, who's getting those 16 to, let's say, 16 to 20 minutes? Because guys will move around. Maybe some guys will play the three a little bit. But essentially, who's going to get those 20 minutes between Max Christie or Dalton Knecht? I know it's not going to be that black and white. As I mentioned, Max could probably steal some small forward minutes. Maybe even Dalton Knecht could steal some small forward minutes. But I imagine at most it'll be something like 3 minutes at the three, if anything, per game. So yeah, what are your thoughts on the battle between Max Christie or Dalton Knecht, and how are the Lakers going to find minutes for both?
So I think it's going to be Max. We made a significant financial commitment to this guy, and at some point we have to see it through, right? It's like he has, at this point, the seniority. I mean, not actually an age, which is funny, over Knecht, but NBA 10-year seniority, I guess, over Knecht. And so, like, he needs a shot. So, to your point, it's not going to be this black and white. Max will probably size up and play a little bit of three because he has good length and really solid size for a two already. But I think by default, the bulk of these minutes are going to go to Max. I think, like, Dalton Knecht is really going to be competing with, like, your I mean, assuming the roster stays as it is, which we have no reason to believe otherwise. Dalton Knecht really becomes more of, like, a competition with Cam Reddish for, like, that fifth guard spot that, like, Max Christie had last year, where it's like you appear in 70 games or something and you play like 8 minutes, and at the end of the year everyone's like, that guy didn't play at all, and then suddenly it's like you somehow appeared in 70 games. I think that's probably where Knecht lands.
Yeah, I think I agree with you. Whatever Max Christie did last season, where he'll have like 3 or 4 games where he really pops due to an injury or he gets elevated a little bit and plays 25 minutes one night, I think that's where Dalton Knecht is going to land. Now, I know a lot of fans are very high on Dalton Knecht. I know the organization and Coach JJ Redick is very high on Dalton Knecht. But I think for as far as next year is concerned, look, I think Dalton Knecht, unless we trade him in a larger package for like, I don't know, an upgraded young player, for the most part, Dalton Knecht is in the long term plans of the Lakers. So they can afford to sort of bring him along a little bit slower. And so Max Christie is their next priority with regards to seeing what they have in this player. And I don't know if I think fans might hate this, but I think we're going to see a lot more three guard lineups next year, whether that's D'Lo, Max, and Dalton, lineups with Gabe, Dalton, and Max. I think they're going to try and find minutes for Dalton Connect. It may just be around, I don't know, 10 minutes a game, 10 minutes a night, if that. Because to your point, the Lakers have concretely invested in Max for the first time. He's on this 3 year, I think it's 3 to 4 year deal with a 4 year player option, around 7 to 8 million a year. They invested that long term deal into him. And yeah, they have to see what they have in him. And obviously, they got a perfect steal in Dalton Connect. And, JJ Redick was apparently, quote unquote, drawing up plays for him the moment they drafted him. Yes, that's all true. Yes, technically, he is the 1-for-1 replacement of Taurean Prince. But I think they're going to operate next season with the mindset that they're going to bring him along a little bit slowly. But I do think, I mean, do you agree with me that they should find consistent minutes for him? I don't know if it's going to be a consistent role every single night, but I do think they should find at least 10 minutes for him, right?
Yeah, I think they will be able to find some amount of limited, consistent minutes. For him, I think it'll be like, how it typically ends up in these situations where first several months of the season, he's getting we're finding these consistent 10 minutes where we use him in these spot roles to be like a spot up shooter and then, kind of a movement shooter. And then over the course of the season, he'll unlock a little bit more of his game here and there. But this team has a certain goal for this season, and if we are competitive for a playoff spot come March, you figure around that time when the roster the rotations get consolidated, Knecht probably starts to reduce his minutes. So they're definitely we need Knecht to play this year. I'm not trying to suggest he's just a rookie, so he shouldn't play. We're going to need him to play and give us some impact. But I just think that you cannot plan for any rookie to really do anything for you in the playoffs. And so, assuming Max has not completely dropped the ball and barring injury, I would assume that he by default gets those minutes, especially when the roster is consolidated, the rotations are consolidated.
Yeah, and I think Dalton Connect is going to be a seamless plug and play fit whenever he does play. But I do think people have to remember that, people will probably say, well, what about Austin Reeves' rookie year? Like a lot of things had to go wrong for Austin Reeves to get those minutes that he did, that first year where he actually showed that he could be a rotation player. I think 4 of our guards were injured or something, and that opened the door for the Lakers to, I mean, at that point, Austin Reeves was a 2-way contract, right? We were so banged up, the Lakers were like, let's just upgrade him to a standard contract, So I mean, if Dalton Connect gets minutes, either something went terribly wrong or he is just killing it to the point where he's so hard to ignore. But more realistically, if he gets a lot of minutes, if he ends up averaging like 19 minutes his rookie year, Tommy, it's probably because we made some sort of consolidation trade at midseason. It's a combination of him playing well, and also we probably did make a consolidation trade and leveled up his minutes and role a little bit towards the middle of the season. And sorry?
Yeah. Or we're just using Max, we're viewing Max as the 1-for-1 replacement for Taurean Prince because he does have the size and length to defend on the wing a little bit better than Knecht, and we'll just play both of them. I mean, it's hard to know right now how they're planning to handle the, that kind of that wing rotation at the 3 spot behind LeBron, right? So there's a few ways that this could go, I think. But we've seen, I mean, just this past year, older rookies like Jaime Jaquez, they can sometimes step in and just look like NBA players from day one. And I mean, Knecht kind of looked like that even in the summer league. As a rookie, he looked like it was kind of his second year there.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so let's move on now to the front court positional battle. I mean, there's no real battle with regards to starters if you're talking about the center and even power forward position. Again, we'll get to we'll get to Rui and Vando in a second. But with regards to the positional battle at backup center and maybe backup four, yeah, who is getting this is a question that we've asked in prior years, last year, but who is getting the backcourt center minutes between Jaxson Hayes and Christian Wood? Anthony Davis is going to get his 30 minutes at the five and maybe his 5 minutes at the power forward spot. Or I don't know, maybe it's more half and half. He's going to get 35 minutes in between the center and power forward spot. So that leaves like 18 minutes at the center spot and maybe 5 minutes of whatever's left over at the power forward position. So who do you think should get the bulk of the minutes between Jaxson Hayes and Christian Wood? Or do you think both should be getting minutes? I know we've said before it's matchup dependent, but I think for me, I would like to if JJ Redick can swing it. I know this is tough to juggle. I would like to keep both of them in the rotation more consistently than whatever Darvin Ham did last season because it was like both of them had to do this revolving door of DNPs, and I don't know if that helps a player's rhythm at all. You know what I'm saying? But yeah, what are your thoughts on who gets the bulk of the minutes between Jaxson Hayes and Christian Wood?
I think it's honestly going to be a real camp battle. I think it's there. I think Reddick is going. I think Reddick is going to give Wood the chance to prove to him that he can do something defensively. Because if he can do anything defensively, he's probably the better all-around player compared to Hayes. To your point, I would also like to keep Hayes engaged. I just don't know how realistic that necessarily is. I mean, if keeping Hayes engaged is sort of like using him how we use JaVale McGee, which is like he plays a little bit in the first half and like a little bit in the second half, totals like 8 minutes and 2 4-minute stints, that's fine. That might be enough to sort of keep him engaged, but I think it's going to come down to Wood's defense because he outperforms Hayes in most other categories. I mean, everybody thinks about offensively, but even rebounding wise, Wood is a pretty solid rebounder. And considering Vando is probably going to come off the bench and, we're going to have spacing issues, potentially, I don't know that our bench shooting on the perimeter is going to be as good as our starters. So it seems like the more seamless fit to give it to Wood, but I really do think that if Wood is still unable to provide any resistance at the rim, they'll just go with Jaxson Hayes and try to win with defense during those minutes, and then let the starters, come back with their offense.
Yeah, and it's weird because Christian Wood was actually pretty good defensively, at least on the perimeter, guarding wings last season, which is
Yeah,
ironic.
yeah.
And this is so sad. This kind of tells the tale of how porous the Lakers' defense was outside of Anthony Davis. But did you know? Well, here's a question: who do you think had the second most blocks per game average besides Anthony Davis?
My guess would be Hayes. I
It's
think.
Christian Wood at 0.7
Okay.
blocks. And then I think it was Jaxson Hayes. But yeah, that just kind of shows you besides Anthony Davis, there really was no rim deterrence on the Lakers or rim protectors. And yeah, Christian Wood unfortunately was saddled with the injury bug midway through the season and was never right. The biggest thing with Wood is he never got his 3-point shot going. That was the thing that you kind of penciled or penned him in for, and he didn't have that. So I think there's going to be a nice positive regression to the mean here for Christian Wood. And if he's able to get his 3-point shot back up to 35% even, then yeah, he is. It's funny because I think both of them fit into the 5-out system in different ways. Christian Wood as the spacer, and obviously he's a good passer and he can kind of do stuff with the ball. And then Jaxson Hayes more as the screener and dribble handoff guy who moves around a lot on the court as the vertical spacer in the dunker spot. So I think in summary, I think it's going to be matchup dependent night to night, but I also think both should play night to night, if that makes any sense. So, for example, one night, if it's a Wood matchup, I think Wood gets the bulk of the minutes at 15 minutes. He gets 2 stints, right? But I think that same game, Jaxson Hayes should at least get 1 stint. The next night, it may be a Jaxson Hayes game. And on that night, then it's Jaxson Hayes who gets the 15-minute 2 stint shift, and then Christian Wood who gets the 5-minute shift. I don't know if that's being too idealistic, but I do think heading into the start of a season, you can play a 10-man rotation. And if we're considering Cam Reddish out of on the outskirts of the rotation, then I think JJ Redick will be able to find it within his ability to involve both, even if it's a night to night matchup dependent thing. Does that make sense? Do you think that's too idealistic to be like, oh, like, hey, in the aggregate, I think Hayes and Wood will each get like 12 minutes per game.
In the like aggregate, meaning like over the course of the season, you think
Yeah,
that's how
but
many?
like from night to night, it could be like, again, like Wood who gets the 15 minutes and then Hayes gets 5 minutes. I have to go back and see if this was actually done, but I do think towards the start of last season, I mean, versus the Clippers, we had lineups out there where it was Wood, Hayes, and AD, wreaking havoc against Kawhi and PG and Zubac. So I don't know if that's realistic over the course of playing all these different NBA teams, but I would like to see JJ Redick at least do a better job of keeping both of them engaged and involved on a night to night basis versus multiple DNPs for either one, So,
Yeah, for sure.
okay. Last question before I take it to break. We handled the backcourt spots with the point guard, shooting guard spot. We handled the backup center spot, the power forward position. Before we dive fully into the power forward and small forward spots, where do, you mentioned him earlier, but where does Cam Reddish fit into any of this? Like, is there a case to be made for Cam Reddish getting some minutes at the three and creating a small forward positional battle between him and Vando? I know you mentioned like a small forward positional battle between him and Dalton Knecht, and I know Cam Reddish started at the two last season while Austin Reeves was struggling. But maybe this year, because of Dalton Knecht's emergence and because we have invested in Max Christie, maybe Cam Reddish, if he plays at all, will strictly be a small forward. And so, in that respect, he's going to clash directly with Jared Vanderbilt or Rui Hachimura, depending on who's starting. But yeah, like in the best case scenario, if we get November Cam Reddish, who was averaging 2.4 steals and he's actually healthy, is there a case to be made for Cam Reddish getting some minutes at the three, or is it silly to be investing in a player that likely will be expiring salary ballast at the trade deadline or sooner?
I don't know that is what makes it a silly reason to invest in him. I think it would be silly to invest in him because he's not good. But
Well,
I
he
think
was good last year. I mean, I'm saying in the best case
I
scenario,
mean,
like we
like
needed him
a
last year.
lot of okay. Cam Reddish was like the number 7 overall pick in his draft. Like I think most guys top 10, picks in NBA history. Like what percent of those guys do you think have had like at least one 5-game, 10-game stretch in their career where they were like they look pretty good?
But that was like a month of like we went 11-1. He was averaging 2.4 steals a game, and he had his best game during the play-in championship against Indiana, where he was like wreaking havoc. Like the best version of Cam fit perfectly with Vando and Max Christie. I'm not,
Right. I
and
guess my
he
point
got
is
injured after that, so there's like clearly a delineation mark there of when his drop off happened. So
I know, but he has not been in the league for 1 year. This kind of like he's been up and down his whole career, right? It's like we could point to the injury, but it's like there's always something with him. And
but
so
that
anyway,
was his
it's like
last chance university last season, and he actually at least held up his end of the bargain through the first half of the season. So this is last chance university part 2 for Cam Reddish. I mean, he's pretty much out of the league.
if he outplays Max Christie, he should get the minutes. But there's just like no way in my mind that is actually possible to happen because I just think Max is like a lot better.
Well, he did it
Yeah, but
last
Max,
year, though.
I don't know that he did it over the course of a whole
He
season.
did, though. I mean, not over the course of the whole season, but literally
Well,
when they
we're
made that
playing a
switch
season.
from Austin Reeves. Well, I mean, this is all dependent on training camp, right? And what JJ Redick is seeing.
If he comes into training camp and outperforms Max, I guess the point I'm trying to make is I don't hold like that spot for Max just because he has a guaranteed, a longer term
I kind of
contract
do,
and is
but
younger. But I'm just saying that like, that by default does not give Max the edge. That in and of itself does not give Max the edge. If Cam comes into camp and is blowing everyone away, then yeah, of course he should start or he should get those minutes. But I just find it so unlikely that it's not even worth like really discussing. But
yeah,
it just
people were saying that last season, and then what he actually saved our November though. That's my point though. I'm not saying
he saved our November, but
that.
his numbers throughout many of the other months of the season were like horrific. That's all I'm saying is like before November he wasn't great.
But he wasn't
after his
playing.
Injury,
he wasn't playing. Like I mean, he was playing, but he was being overextended by Darvin Ham after that. Like I don't even
Right.
know. I don't
We
think
can
he
point
was
to like a
healthy.
million
Yeah.
excuses. The results were what they were, and it was not like a small sample. It's been like he's been in the league for like 5 years or 4 years, right? So it's like we have a sample of who Cam Reddish is at this point. Like if the argument is, oh, Max sucks, I would say like, well, he didn't really get a shot, and look at how he did in these but that's different. That was like the first season Max really played. Like Cam Reddish, we kind of know who this guy is. Maybe he'll surprise us, and that 1 month will become a season for the first time in his career. But I just don't know that you can go into the season like assuming that that's even like likely to happen. It would be a surprise to everybody if that happened.
I don't
I'd
think you
say.
can assume that at all because I think he's getting traded one way or another. But if he starts off next season the way that he did the start of last season, then I mean, even if he's blowing guys away, I don't think he should get any deference over Max Christie because we saw what happened last season, obviously. And again, I mean, they've invested into Max Christie. But I think what the most that can do if he's killing it in training camp is, maybe he starts pushing Jared Vanderbilt for some minutes at the three, is my point. I don't think it's going to be anything substantial because I think this will largely, and this will bleed into our discussion in a second, this will largely be dependent on how healthy Jared Vanderbilt is as well. Because last season, the reason why Cam Reddish got his chance outside of the fact that Austin Reeves was struggling early on was Jared Vanderbilt was injured, and Cam Reddish was the closest facsimile to Jared Vanderbilt, and in some ways was the better screen navigator. So yeah, I mean, we can end this discussion on Cam Reddish here. I didn't expect to go this long, but yeah, I guess my point is if he is killing it, I don't think he's going to steal minutes away from Max Christie. He might steal some minutes away at the three spot away from Vando if Vando's not healthy. But we will see. Again, Cam Reddish is on his last chance you, clinging on to the last vestige of his NBA career here. So I'm assuming he's going to want to leave it all out on the court. That and he is a Dookie, Tommy. So we'll see. We'll see if JJ Redick likes to play his Duke, guys. So don't fully rule it out. With that said, let's take it to break. When we return, we'll get to the debate that everybody's been waiting for: Rui versus Vando Part 2. We will catch you guys after the turn. All right, so we're back quickly, Tommy, with JJ Redick in tow. Now, what are your thoughts on Jared Vanderbilt versus Rui Hachimura? How much emphasis does JJ Redick place on continuity from last season when the Lakers went 22-10 with Rui in the starting lineup? Or how much does he place on the continuity from 2023 when Vando was the starter at the three and the Lakers closed the season off 18-8 and then went on their Western Conference Finals run? Or does he place any value on continuity from lineups the last 2 years because he's a new head coach? Does he just throw everything to the wind and be like, I'm going to start whoever is better out of the two? But yeah, if you had your druthers, like who are you going with regards to the Rui versus Vando debate?
Yeah, I'm actually really curious to see how JJ plans to handle this because he is very focused on the numbers. And I mean, you could make arguments, I guess, for both guys with the numbers. But on the other hand, like he hasn't been here and he may have other considerations. I personally would start Rui. I think that it bogs down unless he could figure something out with Vando offensively, I think it bogs down our offense too much with the starters and it puts like a little bit too much of a burden on AD and LeBron and results in them like really burning out by the end of the game. I think that was like a big problem with a lot of those Darvin lineups that he used to run that were like more defensive minded lineups. It just created a huge mess for us offensively. And you result in like LeBron and AD playing 40 minutes and being like, not being able to move up the court in the fourth quarter. So I think he would probably err on the side of Rui for that reason. But you can make a really compelling argument that we have so much offense in our. I mean, like last year we had games where our starters like scored 115 points, right? Just the starters, and so
We were one of the top 5 offensive teams to close the season out with that starting lineup. We were
yeah,
insanely efficient. Yeah.
yeah. So you could say from that perspective, like to just add a little bit more balance, let's just shove Rui with the bench players because he'll get more touches and looks there. I think it's like as always, the analysis is a little bit more complex than that. Rui, part of the reason Rui is able to put up the efficiency and numbers he puts up as a starter is because he's playing with LeBron and AD. if he's playing with Gabe Vincent and Christian Wood, I don't know that he could put up the same numbers, right? So it 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 does become a little bit more nuanced. And again, I think it's going to come down to which one of these guys, if Vando improved his 3-point shot more than Rui has improved his defense. Like those are those guys' two weaknesses. And if Vando comes in and all of a sudden they're like, okay, 33%, we think he can hit a corner three, maybe he gets the nudge, right? But if it's like Rui comes in and it's like, okay, now he's using his athleticism for rebounding and defense, maybe he gets the nudge.
Do you place any value in Jared Vanderbilt's last 10 games to close last season before he got injured, when he was averaging like 10.6 rebounds and looked more comfortable as an off-ball cutter and a screener, a dribble handoff guy, was finishing better at the rim, shooting 65%. He was like 5 of 8 from 3 in that stretch. I know it's a small sample size, but do you put any value in that in terms of like, I mean, guys who can't shoot are part of 5-out offenses all the time. It's all about how to utilize them.
Yes, I do put some weight on that. I think the trickiest thing with Vando is we heard all about his development and we never, or what he was working on, and we never got to see it. Even when he was with us the first stretch, right? It was such a short time and he sort of got banged up and played out of the lineup because of his offensive issues in the playoffs in his first, little stint with us post Utah trade. So I think that's what makes it hard to project, but that stretch from Vando is encouraging. And yeah, to your point, it's a way that they can use it. The fact that LeBron hit 40% from 3 last year on high volume also is helpful, because it means that like AD is now the only other non-spacer. Keep in mind, the part of the issue the first year we got Vando was like LeBron had the worst 3-point shooting year of his career, and so it thus became really hard to play all three of those guys together. We don't really have that problem anymore. So maybe JJ can come up with something in that context.
And last question for you. Is there an argument to be made that Rui can do his thing off the bench as the go-to scorer if he's flanked by a Gabe Vincent, Max Christie, Christian Wood, Jaxson Hayes? Or can he do better than 16 points on 57% from the field and 44% from 3 with the starting lineup?
No, I don't think he can. And that's like the point I was trying to make. This analysis sometimes gets a little bit too, like, people are just, it's not like NBA 2K where you plug one guy out, plug one guy in, and it's like they just continue to, oh, now he'll have more touches, so his scoring might go up. It's like, no, part of the reason he's scoring so well and so efficiently is because he gets so many easy looks playing with LeBron and AD, and honestly, even with D'Lo and Austin, who demands so much attention. Like, Rui is a very good offensive player who is the 5th option in our starting lineup, which is crazy, right? Because he's good enough to be slightly better, I think, for other teams. And so as a 5th option, you're getting like a lot. He gets a lot of dunks. He gets a lot of one-on-one post ISOs. He gets a lot of corner open spot up 3. Like, he gets a lot of stuff to make life easy for him that you're not going to get when it's like throw the ball to Rui in the post and he's flanked by, Gabe, Cam Reddish, Christian Wood, etc. And go to work, and then it's all of a sudden like, what's he going to do?
Yeah, and I think you want to continue to foster the type of Rui, complementary Rui, that we saw from him towards the end of the season, where he was able to play off ball and shoot a ridiculous like 42% from catch and shoot threes, et cetera, et cetera. I think the only thing for me with regards to Vando is whether or not he's 100% healthy. I think that will determine a lot for JJ Redick, because if Vando is going to continue to be sort of banged up and he's going to continue to need to put so much weight and pressure on his foot to run around on defense, then maybe it makes sense to always just cap him at 22 minutes a game. And in that sense, if you have a 22-minute per game player, maybe you just bring him off the bench, situationally. And that doesn't mean Vando's not going to close games. I think he will close a lot of games, but in order to you almost have to sort of preserve Vando, right? Who's had a history of foot issues. Rui's the more durable player, right? And so it may make more sense to ride with Rui towards the start of the season. We have seen him have success in the regular season, and every step along the way from what we've seen from Rui, he does a really good job of growing and improving upon the last season, right? So I think this season, heading into this season, he will take with him all of the flaws and issues that he had trying to guard guys like Michael Porter Jr., not being attentive off ball defense wise, not being able to box out. And I think he's going to improve upon those issues this upcoming season. And if that's the case, then yeah, maybe starting Rui is the best way to balance out this roster in general, at least to start the season. All right, with that said, that does it for this episode. Please follow us on Twitter at Lakers Legacy Pod. We will catch you guys next time. Tommy, have fun in Hawaii and happy NFL opening night. And yeah, stay cool, everybody. It is hot as balls. Tommy, I will catch you later.
Peace.
Laters.